If you've been doing everything right but still feel stuck, listen carefully. Not because you're failing, not because you missed something, but because there's something you're still carrying and it's heavier than you realize. This message isn't loud. It doesn't come with fear. It comes with clarity. You're not stuck. You're just carrying this. And the reason it hasn't moved yet is because you haven't seen it clearly. You wake up and try again. You push yourself. You stay patient. You tell yourself to be grateful. And yet there's this quiet weight that never fully leaves. It shows up as tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, as hesitation when you're about to move forward, as that feeling that something is off even when things look fine on the outside. That's not laziness. That's not lack of faith. That's not weakness. That's misalignment. And here's the part most people miss: misalignment doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It means you're carrying something that no longer belongs on the path you're on. You've outgrown something, but you're still holding it. It might be a role you keep playing so others feel comfortable. It might be a version of yourself you no longer recognize but still defend. It might be a responsibility you took on during survival mode that was never meant to be permanent. You didn't choose it because you wanted to. You chose it because at the time you had to. And that's important to understand. What you're carrying once kept you safe, but now it's slowing you down. This is why it feels confusing. Because you're not carrying something bad. You're carrying something outdated. And outdated weight is the hardest to release. You don't see it as a problem because it feels familiar. You don't question it because it helped you survive. You don't let it go because part of you still believes letting go is risky. But here's the truth you need to hear. What protected you then is restricting you now. That's why progress feels heavy instead of exciting. That's why clarity feels close but never complete. That's why you keep stopping right before momentum builds. It's not because you're afraid to move forward. It's because something from the past keeps coming with you. And it doesn't fit where you're going. People around you might not notice it. They see you functioning. They see you showing up. They see strength. But they don't feel the internal resistance you feel when you try to take the next step. You feel it when you hesitate for no clear reason. When you overthink decisions you already know the answer to. When you feel guilt for resting. When you feel responsible for things that were never yours to carry long term. That's the weight. And the reason it's coming up now is because your life is trying to speed up. When things are meant to accelerate, unnecessary weight becomes obvious. What once blended in starts to feel heavy. What once felt normal starts to feel draining. That's not a sign something is wrong. That's a sign you're ready. Here's something most people never hear. Feeling stuck is often a symptom of growth, not failure. Because growth demands honesty. And honesty asks uncomfortable questions like, why am I still holding this? Who would I be without it? What am I afraid will happen if I let it go? Those questions don't show up when you're meant to stay the same. They show up when you're meant to move forward. There's a part of you that already knows this. You've felt it quietly, in moments of stillness. In flashes of awareness you quickly push away because life is busy and responsibility feels urgent. But awareness doesn't disappear just because you ignore it, it waits. And lately it's been tapping louder, not to overwhelm you but to prepare you. Because the next phase of your life requires mobility. Emotional, mental, spiritual mobility. You can't move fast while carrying something you were only meant to hold temporarily. This is why forcing motivation hasn't worked. This is why pushing harder hasn't fixed it. This is why positive thinking alone hasn't lifted the weight. Because this isn't about effort. It's about release. And release doesn't start with action. It starts with recognition. You don't need to know everything yet. You don't need to have a full plan. You don't even need to be ready to let go completely. You just need to admit this. Something I'm carrying no longer fits who I'm becoming. That single realization is powerful. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you name it, it loses control. Once you acknowledge it, alignment begins. And alignment always comes before movement. This is why things haven't collapsed, why you haven't fallen apart, why life hasn't forced the change yet. You're being given the chance to choose it consciously instead of being pushed into it painfully. That's grace. Some people don't get that window. They get breakdowns, burnouts, forced endings. You're getting awareness, which means you're early, which means you're protected, which means you're trusted with responsibility over your own growth. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not missing anything. You're just at the point where carrying less matters more than doing more. And this is where things begin to shift. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily. The moment you stop defending what's heavy, the moment you stop explaining why you still carry it, the moment you stop confusing familiarity with alignment, that's when clarity replaces confusion. That's when energy returns. That's when movement feels natural again. And that's when life starts responding differently, not because you changed who you are, but because you finally stopped dragging what you're not meant to bring forward. This is not the end of a chapter. This is the moment you realize why the chapter felt heavy in the first place. And in the next part, you'll understand exactly how to recognize what to release and what happens the moment you do. Because what's waiting for you doesn't require more effort. It requires space. You've probably been wondering how to tell what exactly it is you're meant to release. Because if it were obvious, you would have let it go already. The truth is, what's slowing you down isn't always something visible. It doesn't always have a name. Sometimes it hides behind good intentions, responsibility, loyalty, or even love. That's why it's lasted so long. What you're carrying might look like discipline on the outside, but on the inside it feels like pressure. It might look like patience, but internally it feels like self-denial. It might look like strength, but deep down it feels like silence where your voice should be. And that's the key. What drains you without restoring you is not aligned anymore. Aligned things can be hard, but they don't hollow you out. They don't disconnect you from yourself. They don't require you to shrink, delay, or explain who you are becoming. So pay attention to this. What part of your life feels like you're constantly holding your breath? That's where the weight is. You may have told yourself, just a little longer. You may have believed that endurance itself was the purpose, and for a season it was. But endurance is not meant to be permanent housing. It's a bridge, not a destination. Staying in endurance too long turns wisdom into weariness. This is why your intuition has been louder lately, why rest hasn't fully refreshed you, why distractions don't distract the way they used to. Something in you knows it's time to stop normalizing what quietly hurts. And here's where fear tries to step in. Fear will tell you that if you release this thing, everything will fall apart. That people will leave. That you'll disappoint someone, that you'll lose control, that you'll regret it. But fear always exaggerates the cost of change and minimizes the cost of staying. What fear doesn't tell you is how much energy will return once the weight is gone. How much clarity follows release. How quickly life begins to respond when you stop resisting alignment. Because here's the part that matters most. The moment you let go of what's slowing you down, you don't lose yourself, you recover yourself. You've been functioning on partial power, not because you're broken, but because a portion of your energy has been tied up maintaining something that no longer fits your future. That maintenance is exhausting. You explain, you justify, you manage reactions, you silence instincts, you replay conversations in your head, you anticipate outcomes that haven't happened yet. That's where your energy has been going. And when that stops, momentum begins. Release doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as no longer engaging the same way, no longer reacting the same way, no longer volunteering yourself for emotional labor you were never assigned. Sometimes release looks quiet, but quiet doesn't mean weak. Quiet release is powerful because it's intentional. It's not rebellion, it's recognition. You recognize that you are not meant to carry everything you once carried. That growth requires subtraction. That clarity demands honesty. That peace comes from alignment, not endurance. And once you make that internal decision, even before anything changes externally, something shifts. You start sleeping differently, you breathe deeper, your thoughts slow down, opportunities feel less forced, ideas arrive without strain. That's not coincidence, that's alignment activating. This is where many people get surprised. They expect chaos after release. Instead, they experience relief. They expect loss. Instead, they experience expansion. Because what was slowing you down wasn't holding your life together, it was holding your life back. And life has been waiting for you to free your hands. There's a reason things haven't fully taken off yet. A reason progress felt delayed instead of denied. A reason doors felt closed but never locked. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't lack of favor. It was protection. You weren't meant to carry the old weight into the new season. If things had moved faster, the cost would have been higher. You would have arrived exhausted instead of ready. So timing adjusted. Now you're here, aware, stronger, clearer, more honest with yourself than you've ever been. That's not accidental. And here's something important to understand: when you release what's slowing you down, you don't immediately get everything you want. You get something better, you get momentum. Momentum doesn't shout, it builds. It stacks, it compounds. One aligned decision leads to another. One honest boundary leads to peace. Peace leads to clarity. Clarity leads to confident action. And confident action changes outcomes. You'll notice people responding differently to you. Not because you demanded it, but because you're no longer leaking energy. You're no longer available for misalignment. You're no longer negotiating with what drains you. Your presence becomes grounded, and grounded presence attracts the right pace, the right people, the right opportunities. This is where things begin to reward you, not because you suffered, but because you learned. Not because you waited, but because you released. Not because you endured, but because you aligned. The version of you that survives carries everything. The version of you that thrives chooses what to carry. You are moving from survival to sovereignty, and sovereignty requires clarity. So if you feel a quiet pull toward change, trust it. If something feels heavy without reason, question it. If your spirit feels restless, listen. Not everything that feels familiar is meant to stay. Not everything that helped you grow is meant to go with you. Not everything you carried deserves to be carried forever. This is not loss. This is refinement. And what comes next won't demand more of you. It will match you. You won't have to chase it. You won't have to prove yourself. You won't have to carry what was never yours. Because once the weight is gone, movement becomes natural. And the life that felt delayed finally begins to flow, not because something external changed, but because you did. You didn't need to become more. You just needed to carry less. And now you're ready.